never see their mouth moving. I just see a picture of them.
There might be a bit of a delay.
Chair Mitchell is a little delayed.
We ready to go, guys?
We are, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, I will call to order the Monday, July 13th, 2020 meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment on any topics that are not on our agenda this evening. Do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay, then we will move right on to our one and only public hearing of the night, which is GLUA-20-00014, widening, I-205 widening and Abernathy Bridge seismic upgrades. And I will start by, as usual, reading the script. We have one public hearing on land use application on the schedule tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Planning Commission are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the commissioners whether they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the commissioners have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any commissioner about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that will apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. Hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart on the wall at City Hall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster board, report, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be determined appealable to the City Commission or the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And so now we will open the public record for Oregon City file number GLUA-20-00014. So the standard questions for the commissioners regarding ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or site visits. Commissioner Johnson.
No site visit, no conflict of interest, and no ex parte contact.
Okay. Commissioner Guile.
Obviously, I pass through that area all the time, but I have no contacts, don't know anybody involved in it, but God knows I drive through that all the time, so that's the only thing I can say about it.
Okay. Commissioner Schlagenhofer.
No ex parte contact, no conflicts of interest, and the only place that I really went to look was where the parking is going to be added. And then I drove over the bridge, but I couldn't really see much by doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Staggs.
I have no ex parte contact, no conflict of interest, and I know where the site is.
Okay, I have no ex parte contacts, no conflict of interest, and I've visited the site multiple times, obviously, but not intentionally in advance of this hearing. So, does any member of the audience wish to question any of the commissioners about the disclosures we've just made? Sounds like there aren't any. So we will move on with the staff report, and I believe it's Ms. Vasileva.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. I'm Diliana Vasileva. I'm the assistant planner for the city, and I'll be presenting the staff report for the I-205 widening project. This is an overview of the project area. The majority of the project area is within the public right-of-way. There are two private properties, which are actually city-owned, that are part of the project area, which are John Storm Park and Sportcraft Landing near the river. The remainder of the project is within the public right-of-way. Our site plan and design review standards in the planning division don't apply to the public right-of-way, though we do review any impact to overlay districts or any tree removal, regardless of whether it's on public or private property. So this is an overview of the project. The project includes the seismic improvements to the bridge over Main Street and the Abernathy Bridge, which are shown in pink on the site plan. The project also includes widening of I-205 to provide an additional travel lane in each direction, as well as a northbound auxiliary lane, which is shown in the reddish color. As part of the project, additional parking is being added to John Storm Park. It is hard to see on this site plan, but it's shown in yellow there, and it's labeled as Clackamas Drive parking areas. And in order to accommodate the widening, new bridge piers are being installed, and as part of that, the Abernathy Creek outfall into the Willamette River has to be rerouted to accommodate the new bridge piers that will be located there. So obviously this is a big project and it's complex, but our review is actually pretty limited to the following items. We are reviewing, again, any impacts to the overlay districts, which includes disturbances within the natural resource overlay district, as well as reviewing the floodplain and Willamette River Greenway overlay for compliance with those standards. We are reviewing the new parking lot within John Storm Park, just like any other parking lot that we would review. And we also are reviewing a variance to the height for the new bridge piers because they're exceeding the height limit. And finally, we're reviewing any tree removal associated with the project. So starting with the natural resource overlay district, it is shown in purple on the map there. So the natural resource overlay is a protected buffer from natural features such as streams or wetlands. So the idea is that you have a stream or a wetland and then a vegetated buffer around that feature and then development outside of that. And any development or disturbance or encroachments within the natural resource overlay district require mitigation. So with the NROD review, we're reviewing both temporary and permanent disturbances. We are reviewing any tree or vegetation removal and mitigation for any of those encroachments or disturbances is required at a 2-to-1 ratio based on the square footage of the area that's being disturbed. And the important thing to remember with the natural resource overlay is that the city's jurisdiction is only within the vegetated buffer. We do not regulate the natural features themselves. So the rerouting of Abernathy Creek is not reviewed by us. Neither is any work taking place within the Willamette River. That gets reviewed through the Department of State Lands and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So that's outside of our purview. So the kind of translucent purple color, again, shows the city's mapped natural resource overlay district. This map is based on a 1999 inventory of natural features. So in some locations, the boundary may be incorrect. Because, wetlands may have shrunk or grown or not be there anymore. So typically what happens with development applications is that the applicant will hire a qualified professional like a biologist or hydrologist who goes out on site and delineates the natural features and determines what the protected buffer around them needs to be. Kind of essentially disputing what the city's maps show. So the applicant did that in this case. So what their study showed is a 200-foot buffer for the Willamette River. And then they also found 2 wetlands, which are kind of near the edge of the project boundary, closer to the interchange with Highway 213. So the wetlands are shown in a blue color. I think you can barely see them. And then the turquoise color is the protected buffer around the wetlands. The project does encroach into that protected buffer because that is where the widening of the freeway is taking place. So mitigation is required for those disturbances as well as the disturbances near the Willamette River. We do have a condition for a revised mitigation plan because some of the there were some disturbance areas that should have been counted as disturbance that weren't. So we have a condition for a revised mitigation plan, recalculating the disturbance area and then providing mitigation at a 2-to-1 rate as our code requires. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question before you go forward on that map? What does that mean on remove NROD? I see the purple marks go into the middle of the Willamette River. What does that mean, remove NROD-OHW?
That is the ordinary high water line. So there are some definitions in our code which basically kind of explain how the protected NROD buffer is measured. So it basically says that within the ordinary high water line, those areas are outside of our jurisdiction, and then the buffer is measured past that point.
So I saw that on a previous map. So the purple is something out of our purview, out of our responsibility. That's state, federal, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be reviewed through those permits with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
And I see the same in the Cove area too. There, that's the heavy purple. So it's the light purple that is Oregon City's responsibility.
Correct. The light purple is Oregon City's mapped NROD, and then the turquoise colors are based on the delineations that the applicant's wetland scientists
So the
performed.
golden also says remove NROD development Is that the development area yourself? I mean, where the road's gonna go, is that why it's removed from Enrod?
Yeah, so we wouldn't be changing our map as part of this, so nothing is actually being removed, but that is area that, already is impervious surface, so, there's an exemption within our Enrod code that basically says, you can have, you can make modifications as long as you're not increasing the impervious surface. So areas that are already impervious don't require mitigation because they're not part of that vegetated buffer.
And I did read through this, but I want to make sure the applicant is the state, right? When you refer as the applicant?
Yeah, ODOT.
Not the developers, but the state itself. Okay.
ODOT and their consultants.
thanks.
So the two turquoise areas on that map are areas that are not on our Enrod overlay map now, but were identified by the state's professional as being wetlands, right?
Yeah, they are actually on our Enrod map as well. Our Enrod map shows a much bigger vegetated corridor. When they went out on site, they found that there weren't actually, wetlands and streams that need to be protected in that entire purple area. It was only those areas that are shown in turquoise.
Okay.
I didn't include the applicant's full mitigation plans just because there was a lot, but this is one example of the mitigation areas which are proposed along the near the interchange with Highway 213. And on the left, you can see the density of mitigation plantings. So our code has a calculation for how many trees and shrubs you need to plant as mitigation based on the area of disturbance. So again, this isn't their full mitigation, but just kind of to give you an idea of what that looks like. They're also proposing additional mitigation near the river in John Storm Park and in that area. Laura, my clicker is not working again. So in addition to the Enrod, we're also reviewing the project for compliance with the Willamette River Greenway code. The Willamette River Greenway is an overlay district that protects access, natural, scenic, historical, and recreational qualities of land along the Willamette River. Our staff report includes findings that the applicable criteria have been met. Access will be temporarily impacted during certain phases of construction, but there will be no long-term permanent impacts to access to the Willamette River or other qualities protected by the overlay district.
Does that mean Clackamas Park will be unusable for a while?
I don't think Clackamas Park
Because I see it in the green area, but...
Yeah, it's within the overlay district, but not within the project area. I think there will be certain phases of construction where John Storm and Sportcraft Landing will be impacted.
Okay.
But again, no permanent impacts once this project is wrapped up. It'll be how it is today. Laura, do you mind going to the next slide? The other overlay district that we're reviewing is the floodplain overlay. The important thing that we review with the floodplain is a balance of cut and fill. So what that means is that any time that you are adding fill within the floodplain, whether that's pavement or a building or a bridge support, you have to take out an equal amount of fill as to not raise the floodplain. So the applicant has submitted documentation from an engineer demonstrating or, providing the calculations demonstrating how the cut and fill is balanced, as well as a no-rise certification demonstrating that the flood level isn't rising as a result of this project. So the applicable criteria there have been met with the conditions of approval as well.
When you talk about the floodplain, are we still talking the 100-year floods or just any floods? Because we know it floods more than one every 100 years.
Yeah, so the overlay district includes both the 100-year floodplain as well as the 1996 flood inundation level, because I think in some locations, the 96 flood was actually higher than the 100-year floodplain. So the overlay combines both of those.
And Lord knows we've had Clackamat Park underwater and up into the roads and even off years too, so.
Do you mind going on to the next, Laura? Thank you. Okay, so another part of this project that we're reviewing is the new parking in Clackamat Park. So the parking, it's in John Storm Park on Clackamat Drive. The parking is on Clackamat Drive, but in this, so it looks like it may be on-street parking, but this portion of Clackamat Drive is actually part of the park property. So it is treated like a private parking rather than on-street parking. So it's subject to all of our standards that we review with any other project that includes a parking lot. So the new parking will still allow the park to remain in compliance with the minimum and maximum parking requirements. They have requested an alternative landscaping plan because the parking won't comply with all of our parking lot landscaping standards that we typically review, like perimeter parking lot landscaping around the perimeter of parking lots, or interior parking lot landscaping, which is typically a planter strip in between parking spaces. Obviously, those standards are intended to apply more to traditional parking lots, and instead, the applicant has proposed a planter strip between the new parking and the sidewalk, and requested the alternative landscaping plan. The requirements for the alternative landscaping plan is that it has to better meet the design standards, and it has to meet the intent of the standard that's being modified. So it better meets the design standards because it is not practical to have the required perimeter and interior parking lot landscaping that we typically would require for a parking lot with this kind of on-street configuration. And the alternative meets the intent of the standard because the planter strip that they're proposing still will provide the same benefits like stormwater benefits and shade and that kind of thing. So we are recommending approval of the alternative landscaping plan. And then the next thing we're reviewing with this application is a variance to the height of the bridge piers. The picture on the left, there's the existing bridge. So the zoning here is institutional, and in this zone, the maximum height limit within 100 feet of the district boundary, which the bridge piers are within that 100-foot district boundary, the requirement is that the height can't exceed 35 feet, and then elsewhere it's 70 feet. We have a definition of structure and building in our code, which is anything constructed or erected that requires location on the ground or attached to something having location on the ground. I don't think that we meant for height standards to be applied to things like bridge piers, but unfortunately our code doesn't specifically say that. And because they meet this definition of a structure or building, they're subject to the building height, and they are exceeding the building height. The existing and proposed bridge elevation is approximately 90 feet. So that is why a variance is required. Go ahead. I won't get too into all the variance criteria, but the variance criteria are met, and we have findings in the staff report. The gist really is that it is impracticable and maybe even impossible to bring the bridge down to that 30-foot height limit. If you bring the bridge that low, which obviously is really complicated, there won't be adequate clearance for roads under the bridge like McLaughlin, and there really aren't any other alternatives, and they're requesting the minimum required. They're just asking to keep it where it is.
Even though that's a state highway, they have to conform, typically they have to conform to our city code for heights unless we do a variance. Is that the correct idea?
Correct.
Even though it's under the state?
Yeah, because
Usually the state tells us what to do.
well, the bridge piers are within the park property, but also even within the right-of-ways, our height limits still would
Of our
apply.
city. Okay, thanks.
And then lastly, as part of this project, we are reviewing any tree removal associated with the project. This, again, is just one example of the tree removal plan. This isn't all of the trees that are being removed, but they're proposing tree removal along the I-205 corridor where the expansion is happening, as well as some tree removal closer to the river within John Storm Park to accommodate the construction areas. We require mitigation for all tree removal. In this case, there are several different chapters of the code that regulate the mitigation. There's a higher mitigation requirement for trees removed in the NROD, and then we have the street tree removal standards, and then just chapter 1741, our general tree removal and mitigation standards. So we have a condition of approval for a finalized tree removal and mitigation plan. In some cases, the applicant is actually providing more mitigation than what is required, and then in other cases, they're providing less, just based on those different requirements within the different chapters of our code. So the condition of approval is to provide a finalized tree removal and
And
mitigation.
the red line is the outline of, where the, all construction is going to take place, just the red line?
Yeah, I think that's the right-of-way boundary. Or sorry, that's the project area, correct?
Oh, okay, thanks.
And then on the right-hand side, again, is just an example of some of the mitigation planting areas where the mitigation trees will be planted. That is the McLaughlin and I-205 interchange. Will you go ahead? I do have a few corrections to the staff report. Condition 12 just had a weird error reference message. It is listed up there. It should read, the developer shall submit a traffic control plan for review and approval by the city. Condition 21 also just had some weird wording. It said that it required the condition prior to conducting any tree removal as well as prior to issuance of a permit. It should read just prior to conducting any tree removal. And condition number 26, this language was already in the finding, but it wasn't copied to the list of conditions. This condition is allowing some, exceeded plant spacing, but it should also have the underlined portion which says that the plant spacing may be exceeded, provided that mitigation is provided at a 2-to-1 ratio, like we talked about, and that the mitigation area includes the required number of trees and shrubs. And number 29, the language in the staff report reads that the condition is required prior to completion of the project. It is actually required prior to beginning development within the NROD disturbance area based on the requirement in our code. So with that, I can answer
What
any
does that mean, a
questions.
financial guarantee for the mitigation? They have to show they have so much money to replace the trees and do the mitigation?
Yeah, so our natural resource overlay district, so for the mitigation area that's required based on your disturbance, we require that the applicant provides a financial guarantee for whatever those mitigation plantings cost. And the code also requires the applicant for the next 5 years to provide monitoring and maintenance of those plants to make sure that they are surviving. So the financial guarantee is kind of an extra layer of protection to make sure that all those mitigation plants that they plant survive. And at the end of the 5 years, if I think the requirement is 80%, if 80% of the plants have survived, we release that financial
Who
guarantee.
determines that financial amount? The city does that, or do they?
Typically, the applicant provides a cost estimate. Usually it's like from a nursery or something for whatever the required number of trees and shrubs.
And who reviews that? Enrod, the city, or who reviews what those costs are to know if it's accurate or close to what you want?
Most of the time it comes directly from a nursery, so we kind of just take them at their word. I've never had one that seemed way off.
This is a big project, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're recommending approval of the application with the conditions of approval, and I can answer any questions.
Sorry to be interrupting there, Mike, but I wanted to catch him while we were going along.
Yeah, I understand. That's fine. Okay, so questions for staff. We'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
The one question I have is rerouting of Abernathy Creek into the Willamette, which sounds like what I've known for years is it's pretty against the law to reroute a river stream or anything like that. Whose land is that on, and do we have a lot of issues or concerns with what's going to happen in that area?
I think the, part of the, where the Abernathy Creek culvert actually is located is on city-owned property. I believe that's in the the Sportcraft Landing property. But again, the actual stream is out of our jurisdiction as far as, any rerouting or anything that's done in the stream that would be reviewed by DSL and Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. And is it underground? It's underground in the city the way I think I heard you say it. Is it underground all the way to the Willamette?
It's underground. I think I have it on one of the maps, but I think it's somewhere around kind of where Main Street is where it goes underground. And it is, in a culvert across the 99E and I-205 interchange, and then across McLaughlin Boulevard, and then the outfall is in the Willamette River.
It's pretty short distance, within a couple 100 feet or something.
I think it's more than that, because it's all of McLaughlin and then the interchanges. It's Main Street as well. So
But most of that isn't our concern tonight? Or is some of it? Are they changing it in the city boundary?
Yeah, the actual rerouting of the creek is not in, our jurisdiction and not subject to our NROD standards. We just regulate the buffer around the creek or around any natural feature, but not the, feature itself.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Commissioner Guile, questions for staff?
Just a continuation of what Vern just asked. Is it a protected fish? I mean, I've been hearing a lot lately over the 8 years I've been here about fish being able to go up the streams. Is that protected, that Abernathy, for any kind of runs of fish off the Willamette? Even if it's a pipe?
It is, so it is a fish-bearing stream.
That's the word I want to
And
use.
it is protected, just not by us. It's
Okay,
protected
but
by the
somebody's
state.
protecting it. My other question was, I know, I was looking at all the pictures of the new, the new on-ramps. Does this interfere at all with the hotel that's being planned down next to the highway there? I know we went through a hotel expansion several years ago that's still being planned to be built down there. Does the, what do you call it, the on-ramps affect that at all, the hotel? Does anyone know?
No, there is some kind of reconfiguration of the existing, on-ramps, near the, OC shopping center there, just to accommodate the additional lane, so just to match up with that new lane, but it wouldn't be affecting.
You know
the-
what hotel I'm referring to on
Yeah,
the other side of
Washington.
205. And that was my first question, is the change or the interchange there impact anything in the OC shopping center, like Sherry's is down there, and that's right next to the off-ramp there. Does that impact any businesses in OC?
It doesn't. The only impacts to any private properties are,
Johnstone.
the parks down by the river. Everything else is within the existing.
I was trying to
ODOT
picture it
right-of-way.
being widened with one lane in each side, or plus I think another lane coming into to 213. And I kept thinking that's going to be pushing out wider and wider. That's why the question about where it interferes with maybe the hotel. There's train tracks there too, so, okay.
Yeah, it won't interfere with any of those
Okay.
existing properties.
That's thanks. That's all, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Schlagenhofer.
Yeah, it wasn't brought up in the staff report, but I noticed there's gonna be a lot of detours and possibilities of the detours changing during construction. Is that something that the applicant's gonna bring up?
That is not part of the land use review.
Okay.
As with any other project, even like, the police station that's being built, there are traffic control plans, which are, reviewed by our Public Works Department in their review. So that will be done later on, but it's not part of the land use review tonight.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had.
Okay, Commissioner Staggs.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Gage.
Mine were answered, that Vern had asked about the stream, so I'm good.
Okay. Just two quick questions. Have either our Natural Resources Committee or Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee reviewed any of this and provided any comments?
The applicant did present to the Natural Resource Committee. I'm not sure if they presented to the Parks Advisory Committee. They can confirm whether or not they did, but we haven't received actually any comments from anyone on this application.
If I may, the applicant did provide
Hey, Mr. Baumann, if you could wait, we need you to introduce yourself. If you would just address that during your presentation coming up, please.
my apologies.
No problem. Thank you. Anything else for staff?
Mike, I have one other question of,
Yes, sir.
I know this is a land use, but I'm wondering, has this involved the Downtown Oregon City Association? Because if there are, I know traffic is not part of this, but it's going to push people onto that Westland Oregon City Bridge, and that's going to do a lot to impact downtown. Have they been informed or been involved in the process?
We haven't received any comments from them.
Do they know it's coming their way?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if they're on our development review list that gets the notifications for any land use applications.
They're going to have to do a lot of planning about traffic through downtown Oregon City, most likely, like we have on several occasions.
This matter was on the ballot. A description of this whole project was on the ballot and passed last
I know that.
November.
But as long as we're doing all this planning.
I think people are aware that this project is coming down the pike. I mean, so I think if there were big concerns, it probably would have percolated then.
Right, I understand that, but I keep thinking if we're involving Enrod and everybody else, we should involve the Downtown Association. I didn't even remember voting for it, so it's been so long. So I know it was on the ballot. You just reminded me, but Downtown Association, it's going to impact them, and I keep thinking they should be one of the partners in this.
Yeah, we haven't received any comments from them. But again, all of the kind of rerouting of traffic will be reviewed by our Public Works Department later in the process.
That's all, Mike.
Let's see, where are we, Commissioner? Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll move on to the applicant presentation. A couple of things before you start. Generally, you have 15 minutes, but there's a ton of moving parts on this, and you're our only public hearing on the agenda. So if you need to take more time than that, we can be flexible on that and not hold you to that time limit. The other thing that I would ask for our record is that each of you need to introduce yourself by name and your city of residence. And if you could also just tell us what your role is in the project, I think all the commissioners appreciate that too. So we'll hear from the applicants.
Well, good evening, Chair Mitchell, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Della Mosier, and I'm the Deputy Director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office, and I live in Portland, Oregon.
Thank you.
I'd just like to pause before I continue with my remarks so that Brian Baumann can answer the question regarding outreach to the advisory committee that was brought up by the Commissioner Brian.
Commissioner Brian?
Thank you, Della. And again, I apologize for what was an apparent outburst. My name is Brian Baumann. I work for HDR as a consultant and was hired by the Oregon Department of Transportation to help them through the environmental processes and permitings. And the question of which I was answering was whether or not we had presented to the Natural Resources Committee and the Parks Committee, and wanted to affirm that yes, both those committees had received a presentation, and not unlike today, I believe we were the sole thing on their agenda, and we spent about an hour with each one of their groups. And if I didn't already mention it, I apologize. I live in Portland.
Is he breaking up, or is that just me?
A little bit, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Again, Della Mosier speaking. So today we heard the city staff report for ODOT's land use permit application related to the I-205 widening and Abernathy Bridge seismic upgrades project. As this commission is aware, this project was included in House Bill 2017 legislation to bring seismic resiliency and operational improvements to the I-205 corridor in the vicinity of the Abernathy Bridge. The scope of the project includes a third lane in each direction, installing real-time traveler information signs, and modifying closely spaced on-ramps on I-205. If I may, I would like to give a brief update on the real-time signs portion of the project that has been under construction for the past few months. As you know, there were a few nighttime closures of I-205 in the past couple weeks. These closures allowed the contractor to install the foundations and posts to mount the real-time signs. Work over the next few months will include the technical, behind-the-scenes work to hook up power and test the system to get the signs up and running. You will also see some shoulder work and paving that should have minimal traffic impacts. Completion of this initial phase of the project is expected this fall. Returning to the topic at hand, design continues in earnest by ODOT and our consultant partners toward the 60% milestone for the 7-mile-long I-205 project between Stafford Road and Oregon 213. As you know, the design phase of this project is fully funded by the legislature through House Bill 2017. We continue to work to identify funds for the construction phase from all possible sources, including federal and state funding opportunities and leveraging local partnerships here in the region. For the past few years, ODOT has engaged with communities in Oregon City about this project, and we have received a great amount of positive feedback from those efforts. As was mentioned previously, one example of this is ballot measure 3-539, which proposed changes to John Storm and Sportcraft boat ramp parks, which passed with an overwhelming majority of 80% voter support in Oregon City. We appreciate the support for the proposed project and respectfully request your support of the proposed land use permit application. With that, I would like to invite Brian Bauman from HDR to join me as we yield, and the rest of the consultant team, as we yield back time to the commission for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Del. This is Brian Bauman again. I heard a few questions and concerns raised about Abernathy Creek, and I also heard Deliana say, who I'd like to say has been wonderful to work with through this process, and sincerely appreciate her efforts and helping guide us and to be a partner as we were putting in our application and going through the process. But I heard Deliana say it's not within the commission's purview because of it's below ordinary high water. But I wanted to confirm and reassure that those are concerned that the minor realignment of Abernathy Creek is shifting over a few feet. And in doing so, we're upgrading the fish passage in the creek as it is a low flow barrier according to ODF&W to adult coho salmon who do migrate up Abernathy Creek. We've heard that concern, and we are, during our efforts within Abernathy Creek, going to be doing some additional work within Abernathy Creek to ensure a sustainable migratory population of coho can go up into Abernathy Creek and continue to proliferate back through the Willamette system. We've worked with our federal partners, the National Marine Fisheries Service and ODF&W, to make sure that the actions that we are taking are going to be a long-term benefit to Abernathy Creek and the health of the Willamette. Also wanted to reassure that there is no right-of-way impacts in the vicinity of the hotel, nor will there be any impacts to the access to or from 99 for the shopping center or just down the road where the hotel is proposed to access the area. We are confining the footprint of the project in this area to be within the existing right-of-way at those areas, specifically so we can avoid impacts not only to the hotel, but also avoid impacts to Main Street and other impacts where they could really chase out and bleed out into the right-of-way. So the project has made extraordinary efforts to avoid doing so. And I guess the one other thing that I'd like to point out is in one of the figures I noted, there is a noise wall that is shown on the figure as potentially to be constructed with the project. This is on the north side of 205, and it was to accommodate the new development that was there that the project recognized was going to be populated soon thereafter. A final decision on that wall has not been made yet. It's being shown as plans as potential and proposed. But there is still yet work to be done to verify that wall will indeed be constructed. So I just wanted to clarify that on the drawing, so just for clarity's sakes. And if there aren't any questions, I think that's about all I have to say. I guess one other thing. I also heard a lot of concerns about the traffic control plan. I'm sorry, I wrote down some notes and wanted to make sure I tried to hit all the points. The project ODOT has been substantially engaged with the city transportation department as well as the community, doing robust outreach throughout the community, the various organizations in the communities as well as the business community. And as there is a better understanding and we get beyond the 60% plans that Della has said that we're getting ready to hit the milestone, as we continue to develop beyond that and understand better and better the traffic impacts, the project team is absolutely going to continue to work with the city to make sure we minimize those impacts to the traveling public, not only the interstate system, but a local community, to avoid, as was referenced, large diversions onto the old Arch Bridge. We understand that certainly is a concern. We've heard that concern, and we're certainly addressing that through the traffic control plans, and we'll continue to do so as we continue to advance the design. I think really that one's it. Thank you.
Anyone else from the applicant? Is there any other applicant presentation?
There is not a presentation. We were told we were limited to 15 minutes, and so we purposely didn't prepare the presentation. Okay. I apologize. No. Brevity,
what do they say? Brevity is the soul of wit, whatever. Okay, so then at this point, we will move on to questions from the commissioners for the applicants. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, the one question, and I realize it's almost impossible to answer it with a lot of detail, but do you have any general timelines moving forward? I'm sure the one that we would like to see is when is it done and opening and all the traffic is zinging right through the area. Is it going to be drawn out for years or months, or just a general timeline is what I'm looking at?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. Again, for the record, Della Mosier. So we have looked at the construction schedule, and I believe this is looking to be a 3-season project once we identify construction funds and let the project due to the limitations around the in-water work period. But that is for I believe, the complete project, the entire 7 miles. If we end up phasing the project, the durations could end up being shorter, but I think the limiting factor is really the in-water work around the Abernathy Bridge. And of course, we'll be working closely with contractors to look for ways to expedite that, as well as to reduce the impacts to the traveling public. But great question, thank you.
Did she say how long? I didn't hear anything.
Well, it's hard to put a time frame on it,
I know, but I mean 5 years, 10 years?
I said 2 to 3 seasons.
Okay.
2 to 3 seasons, which
yeah, so 2 to 3 in-water work seasons, which would be, little less than 3 years, more than 2 years.
Okay, that's fine for what I was looking for today.
Anything else?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Guile.
I was all fine up until the point of Brian mentioning about the noise wall. May or may not happen. I live up behind Home Depot. I live even further up Holcomb, and I still hear 205. Now that we have all those apartment complexes and condos down there in the new Cove project, and I can just imagine the noise that they would hear on 205 on that area down there. I moved here to Oregon City because I lived in the Terwilliger Curves, and 5 blocks away, and I still heard it. But even here in Oregon City, I hear traffic all the way up on the hill on 205 at nighttime and in the morning time at rush hour. So I can't imagine that you would think that the noise wall would be an iffy kind of a project, and that you would not actually keep that and include that in your plans. That was a question.
Again, this is Brian. Well, thank you for the question. This is Brian Bauman again. So the project is planning to build the wall. There is a process that the state follows that is in concurrence with and follows the federal guidelines on when to build and construct noise walls. The first steps of doing so is determining whether or not they're reasonable and feasible, whether or not, and that test has to do with, do they reduce noise, do enough people get a benefit, and are they cost effective? And the state has completed those studies and determining that those walls are reasonable and feasible. The reason why I brought that up, and I'm glad I did so if you have a question about it, because I do want to be open and transparent, is that the next step is that the folks that are affected by the wall or that see a reduction in the wall that meet the federal criteria have an opportunity to vote in accordance with, there's a voting and it's set out by the state system and it's in their guidebooks, but they have the opportunity to vote to tell the state whether or not they want a noise wall, because a noise wall not only has the positive benefits of reducing noise, obviously noise wall, but potentially has negative benefits, in different scenarios. For example, blocking view sheds or, shading things out or things of that nature. So the state's policy isn't to come in and tell people, this is good for you and we're going to build it. The project will come in and say, this meets all these criteria and will reduce noise. Do you want us to build it? And the folks that are impacted will have an opportunity to tell the state yes or no.
So how do they get to vote? Do you go to the Cove project down there and say, we're considering this? Do you want this or not? Do the residents there get to vote, or is it the owner of the Cove who gets to vote on that? And where do they go to vote on that? It's not on any ballot that I know of.
You are correct, sir. And you are correct on about everything you say. Yes, they go to the owner. Yes, the people that live there get to vote. Yes, we will go down there and have a vote. We did hold these votes for noise walls across the river already in West Lynn. We delayed the vote on the noise walls in Oregon City because we felt like there weren't enough residents occupying the buildings yet to have what we would consider a vote that represented the voices that live there. So we were waiting to have the vote until a little later. But in West Lynn, we did the vote. We went to the communities. We sent out mailers. We went and sat down with the community at several community meetings to explain the voting process and what it meant, what the walls would look like, where they would be located. We answered questions. We provided opportunities for comments and responses to comments. And then we sent out voting mailers to the affected residences and the owners. And we kept a tally of those votes when they came back. It was done, independent of the engineering team view, at least the vote collection and tally, so that we remained impartial to it. And then at the end of the day, we looked at the tally and see, what the vote count was, and that made the decision. And in West Lynn, some of the walls they voted for, and some of the walls they did not vote for. So it was split between the walls there.
That's good to hear. I just know that just since you've done the West Lynn one, I know that the Cove is pretty well full down there. So it's really good to hear that. Thank you. Mike, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. I'm going to dive in here to stay on that subject of noise wall. From what I saw on the diagram, that was on the north side of the freeway. What about on the south side? Because we've already talked about that hotel project. There's a substantial amount of property in that area that's owned by the Urban Renewal Commission that might be developed. There's also a lot of existing homes in that portion of Oregon City, older homes that, may not have quite the soundproofing of construction that a newer home. What about consideration of a noise wall on the south side?
Again, thoughtful question. The entire corridor and all the residences were evaluated for noise mitigation. And I'll apologize, I don't have the noise report in front of me. Honestly, I didn't recognize that this would be a in-depth discussion, and happy to share that noise report with you so you can, look at the detailed findings at any time. As a matter of fact, it's probably available on the website. But what I can tell you is that the entire corridor was evaluated for noise walls, and where the noise walls were determined to be reasonable and feasible, which means they provided noise reduction at a certain decibel to a certain density of people to make it cost effective to build, they were included in the project. If they didn't meet those criteria, then they were not included in the project. I believe on the south side of the road in the area that you're referring to is less dense. And more than likely, if the walls met the noise reduction criteria, they probably would not meet the cost effectiveness criteria of being able to reduce noise by, in this case, 5 decibels at a number of residences to make it cost feasible.
Sorry, muted myself. This may be a question more for our staff or our city attorney, whether or not it's within our purview to request or require further examination of that south wall, or both walls for that matter.
I agree with you, Mike, because it's got potential on the south side.
Well, I think the question is there criteria that requires the city to evaluate noise or to mitigate noise? And I think the answer is no.
Oh. Quick.
Answer.
Mr. Wade, do you have anything to add to that? Is that your recollection of our code also? It doesn't relate to that.
That is correct. There's no criteria of which there would be a nexus to require anything related to the sound wall.
So even with, Mike, even with a new, wider freeway coming through that area, I can't believe that the state or the city would not consider that as important, the noise control for all the people that live at the Cove and the plans for their future. Plus, as Mike pointed out, the hotel. I can't believe that something with this major broadening of the freeway this can't be looked at by the city or by somebody. I mean, it makes me want to say no to the whole thing because I don't think it's fair to the people who live there and the potential people on the south side.
The city could certainly look at it. It's just what mechanism are we looking at it? This is the land use review is the wrong tool to use to look at it. But if the political body of the city wanted to advocate for walls and talk about walls, or urban renewal wanted to build walls, that could be conversations that could happen. They just would happen outside this arena.
So you're saying that this is land use and that noise is not part of land use?
Yes, there is no criteria that says you have to be a certain level of decibels and can't be louder. That's correct.
For a permitted use. If it was a conditional use, we could look at things like adverse impacts to neighborhoods, and noise could be part of that. But in this case, this is a permitted use in this zone, so we don't look at noise.
How is this a permitted use? Is it state permitted use, city permitted use?
Yeah, Diliana, you want to respond?
Yeah, we, in our code, in all zones, transportation facilities are permitted, and that includes freeways.
Even a major expansion like this one?
Correct.
I don't understand it. I can't believe that our city didn't look beyond their small little town to consider noise factors of a major freeway. Just my opinion. Sorry, Mike.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Always welcome your comments. Commissioner Schlagenhofer.
I have days worth of questions about this project, but none relevant to why we're here. So nothing further.
Okay. Commissioner Staggs.
I'll just say that I share everyone else's concerns about the noise. I think there's a lot of ways that can be mitigated when that comes up in other conversations that would make Oregon City a more beautiful place to live and a better place to live. But other than that, I have no questions.
All right. Commissioner Gage.
Nothing further, no.
Okay. As usual, I have a couple of things. If you could put up slide number 11 for a second. There was a aerial photo on that slide. First question, several years ago, and honestly, I don't know if this was an ODOT suggestion or mention, but anyway, I was on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee at the time, and my understanding is that that green area, the grassy area where it says proposed new parking, that actual grassy area, I believe, not what's shown as parking, but the area above it. Yeah, there you go. My understanding is that whole area is ODOT right away. And when this was discussed with Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee a few years ago, there was discussion of using that whole area as a parking lot. So I'm wondering now why it went from, there's a shortage of parking for Sportcraft Landing for sure. Wondering why now more of that ODOT right-of-way is not being considered for a parking lot.
Oh, is my mic working now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was frozen for a second.
Who's talking? Oh.
This is Brian Bauman.
No picture, Brian.
So the design team went through great lengths in looking at a larger parking lot there. And the design team had about 3 or 4 different options. And one of the constraints associated with building a lot there was, excuse me, maintaining or getting ingress and egress without impacting the Abernathy Elm, the historic area there. And the grade differential in doing so made it eventually so that the best solution the engineering team could come up with was that had something on the nature of a 6 or 7% grade in it. We had a meeting and discussed it with the parks director, and then presented what you see before you today to the Parks Commission with an explanation of the other designs and the challenges with implementing a larger parking lot in that area.
Okay, so this was reviewed by Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's another slide, I think it might be 1 or 2 forward of number 11 that shows the existing piers of the bridge. Okay. From that particular view, you can't see exactly what I'm talking about, but another thing that came before PRAC, and again, this goes back years and years. It may go all the way back to when the bridge was originally built. But my understanding from that PRAC meeting was that the design of those bridge piers is such that the view of Willamette Falls is protected, is still open from John Storm Park. And I know I'm going outside of what we have anything to do with, but I'm just going to ask out of my own curiosity, what are those piers? What do the new piers look like compared to this in terms of how much of the view that they're going to block? And do these old piers stay there and you're adding new ones, or do these go away when the new ones are built?
The founding, we had these very same questions from various community members as we reached out. And then this big question exactly from the Parks Committee and members there. Their primary concern when they brought this up was from the viewing platform that's immediately to the north of the bridge. And in response to that question, we did a visual simulation and demonstrated that the new pier configuration would maintain view to the Oregon Falls and the historic Arch Bridge. So we did look at that, and we don't think that there is a visual impact from the viewing platform in particular, is where the issue was raised from. Your other question about the existing piers, yes, they have removed once the new piers are constructed and they carry the bridge. And I believe your third question was what they will look like. they will look, so we did look at that from the viewing platform, the existing piers and the field to the size of the new pier cap and the size of the bridge, because they're going to be a little bigger and look a little bigger than the existing, but they're going to match and form, effectively match and form the existing piers. Did that answer all your questions?
Yeah, on that topic, and I've just got one more. The new retaining wall alongside Main Street, how tall is that? Roughly, I'm not going to hold you to a number.
I'm going to get a little help from engineers on that one. Karen Tateman is the project manager. Oh, and someone just IM'd me and said it is 15 to 20 feet tall.
Okay. And is it back a ways? Is it back from Main Street so that there's room for sidewalk and landscaping and such, or is it going to be just right up alongside the street?
I know that they are a term and condition in what's being proposed that they're constructed on ODOT right away. And they're going to be constructed up on the bankment a little bit. And I think that does leave room for future sidewalk through there to build a standard.
Okay.
Brian, this is Karen. Do you want me to jump in on that one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
If you could please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Commissioners, my name is Karen Tatman, and I work with Quincy Engineering, and we are on the HDR team working for ODOT on this project. I live in Salem. And so the way I would answer that question is, in order to make sure, because there's been some question about the existing retaining wall along Main Street there, who owns it and who maintains it, the City Public Works Department asked that we make sure that the new wall is within the state right-of-way, so there's absolutely no question about maintenance of that. And it will be built there also, the on-ramp from OR 99 to northbound 205 is going to get a little bit wider, and some accommodations for the future. And where it's placed will also allow, if Main Street ever got widened for standard shoulders or wider sidewalk, it will accommodate that as well. So that was the thinking behind that.
All right, great, thank you.
Mike, did your question get answered about the sidewalks? It says, I didn't hear a positive about the sidewalks, just if they happen in the future, but sidewalks on Main Street are pretty important. Was it just potentially in the future, or will they be leaving or adding sidewalks in that area?
This is Karen Tatman again. I can answer that if somebody else doesn't want to. So we will be replacing sidewalks underneath the Main Street Bridge. And as Brian Bauman mentioned, there's been quite a bit of coordination between the design team and the Oregon City Public Works Department. And the city, while we were out there, has asked that the project connect the sidewalk from underneath the Main Street Bridge, so from the Cove. The sidewalk has been built from the Cove around the corner towards McLaughlin Boulevard, so that there's fully connected sidewalk there, and the project will do that. I believe there is some city expense to do that will be considered as part of an intergovernmental agreement, but the project will include sidewalk from the Cove all the way to McLaughlin Boulevard and make sure it's fully connected as part of this project.
Okay. Mike, can I ask one other question?
Yes, you may.
Something that came up when you asked about the piers. I didn't realize that the existing piers were going to be entirely replaced with new ones. And I wonder, does that mean a closure of the I-205 bridge? God knows, we see how backed up it gets in the mornings and in the evenings. Is that going to close it down for any length of time to replace those piers and raise the whole roadway up? Are they going to have to find different ways to go back and forth from south to north?
This is Mike Bertram with HDR. I'd be happy to answer that question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. Mike Bertram, HDR Engineering. I live in Kalama, Washington, and I'm the consultant project manager. So related to the bridge piers, There's a couple of distinctions I'd like to make for you regarding the bridge. The first is the areas of the bridge that are on the land side, and those that are on the water side, and so those that span the Willamette River. So over the river, the piers that you see out there today essentially are going to be mirrored from an aesthetic standpoint, but the new columns will be moved out considerably to the outside of the existing structure. They'll be much larger in diameter. They'll be very deep. And then once the columns have been constructed and the crossbeam has been erected, we will be taking the northbound bridge and we will be shifting it to the outside. And then we will be doing the same thing to the southbound bridge. And then we will be filling in the middle with the new section of the bridge that will constitute the widening itself. In addition to that, before we do that, let's see, we're adding some bridge width to the outside to constitute the barrier to barrier width that's needed. As we're doing those activities, from a traffic control perspective, there will be, I believe there's 2 weekend closures to accomplish that, one for each direction. Besides that, that will be the only full operational close down of the freeway while we're building the work associated with the Abernathy Bridge. As for the land side piers, those columns will remain and we will be doing the widening all to the outside because it's essentially a different type of structure than what's over the water spans. Same thing, the traffic will only be disrupted over the weekends when we're doing what's being called as the bridge launch. So that's shifting it to the outside in each respective direction. Does that make sense?
It does. So it sounds, as Vern pointed out, it sounds like a Selwood Bridge kind of reconfiguration. You guys may not be familiar with Selwood Bridge, but I know how they closed some of that and then opened the side ones until the middle ones were open.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Selwood. I wasn't involved on that particular project. But what I can tell you is that this project has a very robust phasing and staging strategy from a constructability standpoint, and just as large, if not more so, traffic control plan strategy that will help maintain as much capacity and accessibility for both freeway and local street system networks.
So during those closures of those weekends, how are you going to redirect the traffic through downtown Oregon City and over the Oregon City Westland Bridge or through another route?
No, we'll be doing first and foremost, a very robust public information program that lets people as far back as I-84 and as far south as Wilsonville know that there's going to be a closure at the Abernathy Bridge. And then working also with the local jurisdictions to alert and notify their constituency, and then build as much trailblazing traffic control as possible that's going to provide local access to folks that live in and around and want to access the businesses and the like. Will there be disruptions during those weekends? Sure. But we're going to have to work with the local partners to ensure that we're not choking the systems down when we make the freeway closure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners for either the applicant or for staff? Hearing none, at this point, I'll close the public hearing and we will move on to deliberations, comments from the commissioners and a possible motion. Anybody want to start?
I think I've said my piece.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson, anything?
Nothing at this time that I am very concerned about. I think they've done a pretty good job of studying this out and got contingency plans here and there and routing around, so it may be well worth the 10 years that we've been waiting to get it.
All right,
Nope, nothing else.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer?
Yeah, I think we've discussed all the important things. I think the downsides are definitely going to be outweighed by the improvements to the bridge and the improvements to traffic. So I think we've discussed everything that's kind of relevant to why we're here, and I've got no problems with anything I've heard, so I'm happy with it.
Commissioner Staggs?
I don't have any further comments.
Commissioner Gage?
Nothing further.
Okay, just real quickly from me, and this is partly directed at city staff, and it's partly directed to Public Works and partly to the applicant, and Commissioner Guile hit on it. Well, we've all talked about it. The traffic impacts during this thing, it's going to be a nightmare, and the end result's going to be great, but it's going to be terrible. To your comment, Commissioner Guile, with Downtown Oregon City Association, definitely going to want to be involved in what the traffic plan looks like. So just kind of raising a red flag there. And just a side note for my fellow commissioners, and then I'll ask for a motion. If you've never seen that Abernathy culvert where it empties out, I'm pretty sure you have to be on the river to see it, but it is unbelievable. I believe it's 20 feet in diameter. And even with a little bit of water going through it, it is an impressive sight. And I would not want to be down there at Abernathy Creek at flood stage watching the water roar out of that 20-foot pipe. It is incredible. So that's all I have. Does anybody have a motion?
Mike, I've seen Abernathy Creek flood on Redland Road, so I know what you mean. It covers the whole road.
Oh, you know what? I should have, oh, never mind. No, I'm wrong. Sorry. So does anybody have a motion?
I will make the motion if somebody plugs in the different zone numbers that are applicable.
Your motion to approve with conditions as recommended, GLUA 2001. You could just say the GLUA number, the GLUA.
You want me to state the numbers?
It's GLUA 20-00014. And that one will cover all of the files.
So we're only going to, okay.
With the conditions amended in the staff.
Right. Okay.
All right. Does everybody understand what the motion is?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Motion to approve?
I'll second his motion.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Johnson and seconded by Commissioner Schlagenhofer to approve GLUA-20-00014 with revised conditions as provided by staff. All right?
Yep.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
My initial intent is to vote no, but I'll begrudgingly, because I know this is a project that's been in works for a long time and I know it's needed, I begrudgingly vote yes. But I think you all heard the reasons why I would vote no. Begrudgingly, yes.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Gage?
Aye.
Commissioner Staggs?
Aye.
Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay, thank you all very much. And ODOT folks, thank you for your work on this and thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, at this point, we will move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ms. Turway, do you want to say anything about this or do you want me to just handle it?
You can handle it.
Okay. Hopefully you all saw the draft of the letter that I wrote, and I know Commissioner Schlagenhofer took a look at it. Commissioner Staggs, I sent it to you, but I had a question. Are you getting your city email? Because I think there's an S missing in your city email. Looks like it's C tags and not C Staggs. So I wondered if you even got my email.
I am getting it, and I did get it.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully you all had a chance to review it. It was page 2107, I think, of the staff report. It was kind of buried there. Did everybody see the letter?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, that's muffling.
Any discussion? Any suggestions? Revisions?
I think it's fine the way it is. And I support it.
I agree.
I agree.
I thought you nailed it.
What was that?
No, I'm gonna
Nailed
sign it
Oh,
as chair, but it,
Mail, like mail.
No, he didn't
What?
nail it.
no, I signed it as chair, but it does say for the Oregon City Planning Commission, so I thought it needed to come before everybody tonight. That's why I wanted to do it. So it sounds like there's a consensus. I would like to have a motion on the record, though. Would somebody care to make a motion to allow me to send this letter?
I'll move to approve the letter, that was, what should I say, by all of us? The letter to, does it go to the city commission? Is that what we're approving?
The commissioners, the mayor, and Mr. Conkle.
Okay, I move to approve it. I'm not sure what the words do you want me to use? The letter.
I think that's close enough. I think everybody understands. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Guile, seconded by Commissioner Gage. Any other comments? Call for the vote, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Not begrudgingly, but aye.
Commissioner Schlagenhofer?
Aye.
Commissioner Gage?
Aye.
Commissioner Staggs?
Aye.
Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay. Thank you all. Laura, I'll shoot you a quick email figuring out how we get my signature on this thing and, whether I scan it and send it back or whatever. I'll shoot you an email.
Okay.
All right. At this point, we're on to communications. Ms. Turway, anything?
The only communication I have is regarding our OC 2040 Comprehensive Plan update. I am excited. Things are going well. We have an online survey that we have. Last time I checked numbers was midweek last week, and it was open for 16 days, and we had about 400 responses so far, and they're good responses too, with lots of explanation. And so if you would like to go to www.oc2040.com or org, they all go to the same place. And there's a survey there for you to fill out. Also, the next step is to have each of you as planning commissioners. We will teach you about a conversation kit that we are creating, which is a tool that you can use to interview your friends and neighbors to get their in-depth feedback about the future of Oregon City as well. For now, feel free to send everyone to oc2040.com and request that they continue to take the survey. The mayor is going to appoint our advisory team on Wednesday night at the City Commission meeting. We had, I think, 54 people apply for 35 positions. And I'm really excited. We have a really good, diverse group of people, and we're excited for a good process.
Were those 400 unique responses?
Yes, it was 392 unique responses.
Oh, I thought maybe 200 came from Mike.
Yes, there were different submissions.
If they all have to do with Park Place, we'll know it was you, Tom.
Yeah, that's right. I've given up on that. Next step, Estacada.
But that's all I have.
Okay. Anything else from any of the commissioners?
No.
All right. As usual, I'll just say thank you all for putting up with this Zoom thing. I wish I could feel encouraged, but when it comes to looking at the news, I feel like just putting my fingers in my ear and not even hearing, because the news does not seem to be getting any better. And that I'm afraid this is going to be our future for a while. So thank you all for putting up with this. And but now we're adjourned.
Hey, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, one thing. Chris's comes across and Patty comes across like live, like they're right there. Yours is such a delay that when you laughed, that stayed there on the screen. Right now, you're staying on the screen and not moving. I'm not sure why yours doesn't move like Chris and Patty's does. Just something for you to know.
What I'll try for next time. I'm upstairs, and it's a wireless connection. I'll try hardwiring, and maybe I can get a little less lag in things if I'm on a hardwired internet connection instead. I'll try that for next time. Thanks.
Just a suggestion, thanks.
Yep, I appreciate it. Okay, thank you all very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Maybe he's on dial-up.